published 0630 est, the 4th of December 2017 updated 0722 est, the 5th of December 2017 striking images of fighter planes and bombs used during the Second World War have been brought into the 21st century after being expertly colorized. The vivid color images show crashed aircraft engulfed in flames, captured Nazi prototype planes, and military troops working to get jets and bombs into working condition. One image features the B-29 aircraft, which was used to carry out the atomic bomb attacks in Japan, while another shows an atomic bomb, nicknamed Fat Man, that was detonated over the Japanese city of Nagasaki. Another photo shows the damaged tail of a Boeing B-17F-5BO after its left horizontal stabilizer was torn completely off during a collision with a German fighter in enemy territory. In one show, one armed squadron leader J.A.F. McLaughlin, who lost his arm in combat, can be seen standing beside his all-black Hawker Hurricane and a captured Nazi prototype plane. Another stunning shot reveals a Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bomber balanced on its nose after crash landing on a carrier flight deck. Also shown are some of the bombs used in the war, including the Tall Boy, a 12,000 pounds MCD penetration earthquake bomb developed by the British aeronautical engineer Barnes Wallis and used by the RAF during World War II. The black and white photographs were colorized by design engineer Paul Reynolds, from Birmingham. The pilot of a U.S. Navy F-6F Hellcat escapes after a crash landing on the USS Lexington aircraft carrier in 1945. Hellcats were credited with destroying more than 5,000 enemy aircraft fell in service with the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps and the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm more than any other Allied naval aircraft. A total of 12,275 were built in just over 2 years during World War II. Personnel of No. 92 Squadron RAF push one of their Supermarine Spitfire Mark 8s from the mud on the waterlogged landing ground at Cannes, Italy. The Supermarine Spitfire is a British single-seat fighter aircraft that was used by the Royal Air Force and many other Allied countries before, during and after World War II. Bomb-carrying Corsairs of a U.S. Marine squadron warm up at an advanced Pacific base for a strike against the Japanese. The Corsair was designed as a carrier-based aircraft, but its landing performance rendered it unsuitable for Navy use and was instead deployed for land-based use by the U.S. Marines. After the carrier's landing issues were tackled, it became the most capable carrier-based fighter bomber in World War II. Squadron leader J.A.F. McLaughlin, the one-armed commanding officer of No. 1 Squadron RAF, standing beside his all-black Hawker Hurricane Mark IIC night fighter, JXQ, at Tang near Sussex. McLaughlin was wounded in action in February 1941, and his arm was so severely damaged that it was amputated and replaced with an artificial limb. He continued to fly for several years, where he shot down 16 German and Italian aircraft over 250 missions. In July 1942, he crashed over France and he died from his injuries at a military hospital. Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bomber balanced on nose after crash landing on carrier flight deck, June 21, 1943. The Naval Scout plane and dive bomber was manufactured between 1940 and 1944. It's best remembered for being the bomber that delivered fatal blows to Japanese carriers during the Battle of Midway in 1942. The B-29 one pictured above after crashing into the ocean was a 4-engine, propeller-driven heavy bomber designed by Boeing. It was one of the largest operational aircraft used during the Second World War. The Superfortress featured a pressurized cabin, dual-wheel tricycle landing gear and an analog computer-controlled fire control system. The crash landing of F-6F-3, No. 30 Fighting Squadron 2 VF-2, USS Enterprise, into the carrier's port-side 20mm gun gallery on November 10, 1943. Lieutenant Walter L. Tuning Jr., USNR, the catapult officer, is climbing up the plane's side to assist the pilot from the burning aircraft. The pilot, Ensign Byron M. Johnson, escaped without significant injury. Enterprise was then en route to support the Gilbert's Operation A. Military member checks B-29 bombs ahead of a departure to Tokyo in 1945. Unlike many World War II bombers, the B-29 Superfortress remained in service long after the war ended and WASNT retired until June 1960. Among other things, the aircraft excelled at low-altitude nighttime bombing and high-altitude strategic bombing. One of its final roles in World War II was carrying out the atomic bomb attacks in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Two men hoist a Tall Boy, a 12,000 pounds MCD penetration bomb zero from a bomb dome into its carrier. The Tall Boy was an earthquake bomb developed by the British aeronautical engineer Barnes Wallis and used by the RAF during the Second World War. The Bristol Type 156 Beaufighter, pictured flying over a snow-covered landscape, was developed during the Second World War. The RAF first deployed the aircraft during the height of the Battle of Britain, and it proved to be well suited for a night fighting role. The aircraft could accommodate heavy armaments and early airborne interception radar. The Americans had their own uniquely nicknamed bomb, the Fat Man. It was the code name for the atomic bomb that was detonated over the Japanese city of Nagasaki by the United States on August 9, 1945. It was the second of the only two nuclear weapons ever used in warfare, the first being Little Boy, and its detonation marked the third ever man-made nuclear explosion in history. It was built by scientists and engineers at Los Alamos Laboratory using plutonium from the Hanford site and dropped from the Boeing B-29 Superfortress Spock car. The P-51 Mustang, pictured, was a long-range, single-seat fighter and bomber that was used during the war. The P-51Bs and Cs were used to escort bombers in raids over Germany and elsewhere. The Mustang pilots claimed to have destroyed 4,950 enemy aircraft during World War II. The Cougar Show MX-570 Oka Model 11 I-18 was captured from the Japanese Navy Yontan Airfield, Okinawa on April 1, 1945. The kamikaze attack aircraft, nicknamed Baka a Fool by U.S. sailors, was used mainly against U.S. ships invading Okinawa. It was primarily effective due to its high speed and its dive downward. The I-18 is now on display at the Air Museum Plains of Fame in Val, Arizona. One image shows a close-up of the damaged tail of the Boeing B-17F-5 BOSN 4,124,406 All-American 3. The left horizontal stabilizer was torn completely off, and the aircraft was nearly cut in half by the collision with a German fighter over enemy territory. The aircraft was able to return safely to Bass after having the rear fuselage nearly cut off during the collision. The Grumman TBF Avenger aircraft was manufactured by General Motors in World War II. The torpedo bomber was initially developed for the U.S. Navy and Marines, but was eventually used by militaries across the world. The TBM-3, pictured above, was the most common of the Avengers, with about 4,600 produced. Other images in the colorized collection show what are believed to be captured Nazi prototype planes. In the battle to stay ahead of the enemy in World War II, American engineers were willing to employ any trick, including stealing the ideas from their Nazi counterparts. So they shipped hundreds of German aircraft to a field in Seymour, Indiana, where they proceeded to take apart the machines to learn how they were built and then buried any evidence. Doing so, Allies seized around 80 different types of aircraft throughout Europe and then shipped them to Indiana, where they were flown, taken apart and then put back together. While many parts of planes were saved for museum displays, others were discarded, thrown into pits in the field and covered with tons of dirt. Pictured above, a captured Nazi prototype plane in one photo. Aircraft used by the RAF can be seen as the Sunsets in Lancaster. The Avro Lancaster was Bomber Command's most famous bomber during World War II. It was used in several raids in Germany, including the 1000 bomber raid on Cologne in May 1942. Paul Reynolds, from Birmingham, colorized the photos with a digital pen. He said, "The only problems I come across are the condition of the photos, especially private commissions. Most are torn, folded, creased, water damaged, dust spots and discolored, which then has to be digitally repaired with a brush. This process usually takes longer than the paint, but the finished photo is 100% sharper and more pleasing on the eye."